Welcome to episode 237 of the Necronama.com.
You know what's really scary? Book bans. Long a tool of authoritarians, book bans are a direct threat to our freedom to read. That's why Library Foundation SD, Brooklyn Public Library, and other partners across the country have launched Books Unbanned to fight this evil. This campaign makes frequently banned or challenged books available through a digital catalog to young people across the U.S., including states with increasing book bans. Like your local library, it's completely free to sign up. Want to learn more, including how you can help increase access to the books we love? Visit libraryfoundationsd.org.
Fright Rags has been bringing you the best in horror apparel and accessories since 2003, offering a wide range of products for your favorite creature features, slasher flicks, and cult classics. Officially licensed collections include titles like John Carpenter's The Thing, The Evil Dead, Creepshow, Jaws, the Halloween franchise, and so many more. Head on over to fright-rags.com. Make sure to sign up for their SMS and email newsletter to never miss a drop. Listeners get 10% off when they use the code NECRO10, all caps, at checkout. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and I identify heavily with this movie because I constantly want to slam my face into every screen in front of me.
And I am now Dr. Donald R. Guillory. And as the resident doctor on this episode, on this show, and I want to give some medical advice, even though I'm not that kind of doctor. And I'm going to quote some criticism of television in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, and I'm going to paraphrase this. If this television craze continues at the present levels and with the present level of programming, we are all destined to have a nation of morons. I have never seen a more prophetic thing. Now, mind you, as someone who loves television, who loves entertainment, loves film, damn it, there is some shit out there that you really question. What the fuck was the reason for it to even be made? And I will not reference Idiocracy.
I just walk around a lot going, and no one will buy my movies. Weird. Joining us today, another person that somebody out there should buy his books and turn them into movies, Tommy B.
100%.
Tommy, we're excited.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the warm welcome. Awesome to be here. And yes, anyone out there who's willing to buy one of my books and adapt a script, or if I haven't done one by then and make it into a film, by all means, please.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell our listeners a bit about yourself and your works and all that good stuff?
Well, I'm a writer of horror and dark fiction, and which pretty much a lot of what I do falls under that general umbrella term of dark fiction. But a lot of it is horror, and I've done a little bit of fantasy as well. But I've been at it for a little over 17 years. Sold to just a plethora of short stories to a variety of anthologies and magazines, webzines, and the like over the years. Got several books published, a couple of novellas, a few novels, a short story collection. My latest venture is the Black Carmenia series, which is a sort of a Southern psychological cosmic horror series. Is going to land as a trilogy, as it turns out. I signed a 3-book deal, so first 2 books have come out. The last book was Oblivion's Child, and this summer the 3rd book is going to drop in that. And also I've got a couple of short stories coming out this year, one of those in Asylum of Terror Volume 2. So got a few things in the works.
Oh, that's awesome. I knew it was a trilogy, and I knew the new book was coming soon, but I didn't know it was that soon. That's great. Very cool.
Should be out in the months to come.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Hopefully by the time this episode comes out, we can put either the pre-sale link or the, hey, it's out already link, depending on when we drop this. So we'll try to make sure that happens. So check the liner notes in case it's there. Outside of that, I guess just why did you pick Videodrome, man? I'm always fascinated why guests pick each film. So
I've always been curious about the relationship between humans and machines. I mean, from a certain vantage point, we sort of are machines, but we have very complex inner workings, the inner workings of the mind and the brain and what have you, and a relationship with the universe and our perception of reality can be very tricky. I mean, just staying alive is a lot of work, much less trying to process reality or any of these other realities that are thrust upon us by modern social media or television or any other form of media that may come flying in our direction from at any time in any place. So Videodrome is one of those films that sort of struck this balance between um, delivering something that is perceived as weird and strange, but at the same time making a lot of sense, but sort of taking you on a ride into these other realms that you may not have otherwise considered, the relationships between this world and the digital world. And that was in the early 80s. So it was a very different time. We've come a long way in some ways. We've in some ways we've come a long way since then, but there are a lot of patterns that are consistent with as well. A lot of the developments that were in place at that time and things have skewed in their own way, of course, along the way. But I always just enjoyed it as a movie. It's also got a lot of very visceral eye candy. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun, and it's also just weird as hell. So
absolutely. So I'm going to blow both of your minds and say this is the first time I saw it. And I was amazed at how well it holds up and how relevant it is. I went in kind of expecting, I gave myself the pep talk of, look, graphics probably aren't going to hold up. Wrong. Practical effects are awesome. And I was like, some stuff's going to be outdated and whatever. And I thought that this still hits so hard. And we're going to get into a lot of that, obviously. But I want to throw out something else I rewatched. I rewatched Old School this week.
Really?
And there's this part. I love Old School. It's one of my favorite, I'm in a bad mood, I watch this movies, right?
Uh-huh.
But there's this part where Vince Vaughn's giving the speech at the party when Snoop's there. And he's talking about Speaker City, the company he owns. And he's like, if you need beepers and you need DVDs, we're the place. And it was so funny to me that Old School, at least that scene, is already more outdated than Videodrome felt to me. Nothing against Old School. I'll love it forever. Right? Yeah, I do, but it doesn't keep beeping. Sad. But no. But I was fascinated to know from you guys. Like, did you think it's still like super relevant? And like, this was my first time, so I don't know what it was like having watched it several times before.
I mean, I think it is. I mean, I think in when you consider media influence and politics and that opposing sides vying for control and censorship that people are consistently pushing for in different ways than they did back then, but nonetheless, sure, it's still happening.
100%. We talked about this a little bit before we started, and I said you could remake this movie and just it's about the internet, or it's about one specific app as far as reality. I can't remember what the estimate was, but because of I guess they used to call it selfie face, but now it's got a different term. But there were people that were going to plastic surgeons, and I can't remember the exact number or the exact amount of money that was spent. But they were spending money to correct imperfections that they felt they had because they did not look the same way that in reality as they looked in their selfies. So you had a lot of people doing, all types of corrective surgery or get types of augmentations in order to look better. And I remember one of the jokes at the time when this was a news story was, well, I guess people are going to start getting the dog ears and dog tongues because those filters were pretty popular at that time. But I mean, it does have an impression, has a very negative impression and effect on impressionable individuals, as well as people who would recognize themselves or at least identify themselves as non-impressionable, will watch things and you end up with body dysmorphia, whether you realize it or not, in a lot of cases, because of the way that body images are presented, or the way in which people that might have a body image similar to yours are ridiculed and called any number of names when there are no health threats. There are no health risks that that person has. It's just that their body's a different shape. So we have to ridicule them for not being the same. There's so much to go into with not just what was going on when this movie was made, when it was released, but over the span of time that's happened since it was released.
Awesome. Yeah. Really fast. I mean, I know this is getting way ahead, but it's on topic with what you were just saying, both of you.
Mm-hmm.
The whole fact that this comes down to this moment of we're cleansing everybody because you're terrible people.
Right.
Watching this, like, that's what really hit me as the most relevant to today, because you're doing this thing that's like a level 3, and so we're going to kill you, which is like a level 10. And I thought that was so interesting how that never goes away. It's always, we think you're bad people, so we're going to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
It's so weird. It's the number one thing about humans I will never understand. But yeah, I thought that really pulled into what we're saying right now, so I had to jump ahead.
Well, there's the line the one character utters along the lines of, "We're entering savage new times, and we're going to have to be pure and direct and strong if we're going to survive them." And that sort of philosophy, that paranoia, seems to endure generation after generation, that, oh no, the world is changing. We're going to have to adapt, and we're going to have to, change is inevitable. Things are always going to change, right. But there are always going to be those who are afraid of that and afraid of what might happen, and start turning these worst case scenarios around in their heads. And of course, individuals' political leanings and personal agendas and what have you, and whatever philosophy they've been roped into by whoever it is.
Well, you bring up several great points, but when you're talking about that reality and hurting somebody because you need to have this type of perspective going forward. I think about this historically, to bring in pop culture. There's a great episode of All in the Family where Archie Bunker is paranoid about, Black people moving in. Like Sammy Davis Jr. walks, it's that infamous episode where Sammy Davis Jr. moves in and he kisses him when they take a picture. And it was that paranoia that was passed on people. Like we had Reefer Madness, we had the white slavery type stuff that was being pushed, to where you were programming people through the news media, through print media, to believe in all these different things that were going to happen. If X happened, Y is going to happen to you. So if we don't do something about immigration, your daughters are going to be sexually exploited. Or your kids are, your husband's going to get murdered, those types of things. Or if we allow this group of people to buy homes in our neighborhoods, then property values are going to drop down, or violence, crime is going to increase, or all these different things are going to take place. Right. So in that episode, they ridiculed that old programming that was still an issue in the 70s, where this guy who has no reason to oppose somebody moving into his neighborhood is like, it's a new neighbor. I don't have to go to your house. I don't know any of my neighbors where I currently live, right? I don't have to go in your house. I don't need to know all my neighbors. I don't need to know what you're doing. That's not my business. But when they have this interaction, he's trying to establish to him, like, I'm a normal dude. I'm just like you. But the entire episode is making fun of those individuals that, make their decisions based off of, I'm worried about this group of people moving in, to where you get people to do such horrible things, like what happened in many places, but what happened in Cicero, Illinois in 1951, where this Black family moved into this home, and the neighbors all decided that they were going to throw their stuff out, set it on fire, and set the building on fire because they disapproved of non-white people moving into the neighborhood. Anyway, you see how that can get into somebody, or at least this group thing can get into somebody so badly because of media, through newspapers, through films, through television shows, to where when they are presented with this thing that they're afraid of, they will attack it. They will not ask questions. They will simply just go for it, be direct. I'm not going to talk about my feelings. I'm not going to talk about this in a rational way. I'm just going to do something that is going to make me feel better and safe, for that matter.
And so their fear of this worst case scenario actually becomes a worst case scenario
Mhm.
if you're burning your own possessions based
Mhm.
on a misrepresentation, I suppose, of reality.
Oh yeah. Wait, this is a good point for a question. So for either of you, was there ever a moment where your reality was completely shook? And I mean, it could be something as simple as, I was always told this food was bad. Now I have it. I'm like, oh my God, I will never say a bad thing about this food again.
Oh boy. I mean, that could go a
Or even
million
culture
ways.
shock, for that matter. Like, you went to some place, they'd said all these things about this part of the country or whatever, and you realize like everybody who said that is completely lost.
I have what's probably really dumb to everybody else, but it was like this like glass shattering moment for me. My
Mhm.
entire life growing, and I don't know how I didn't see this. I'll just throw that out right away. But my entire life, my mom would use the term cotton picking thief. And
Wow.
one day I was in college and I was sitting there and I was talking to my mom on the phone and I was walking through the quad. Like, I remember this so fucking clearly. She said it and I went, oh my God, that's what that means. But like, that's one moment in my life that I know, like I remember this exact second. And I've taken some shots at my mom in here, and I straight out say that she's not the least racist person on the planet. And so I think that led to multiple glass shattering moments for me. But man, I remember like it was like they were just words before that, and then all of a sudden they were heavy as fuck. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
right.
yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if that's what you were shooting for, but that's
No,
a
that
moment I
is, as
remember.
far as like, there was nothing wrong with this. It was so normal, and then you're immediately told or presented with a contrast to that, and that's yeah, that's it. Tommy?
There are a lot of different instances I could reach back to when I was much younger. Things weren't always exactly stable, but I'm going to go for something very simple. This was a job I had early on. I would say mid '90s. I was working for a chain that is no longer in business, but is lawn and garden and the like. So I went to sometimes there would be truck fulls of plants and mulch and what have you that needed to be unloaded into the lawn and garden department. But I remember there was a truck driver who brought a delivery of landscape timbers. So I went out with the forklift to pick one of them up. Typically, I would do it one by one. And this is always something that's come back to me, though. I just sort of took it as a lesson. So I was picking them up one by one. This old truck driver says, "Why don't you pick those up two at a time?" And I said, "Well, I don't know that the forklift can handle the weight of that." And he said, "Trust me, it will. I've been doing this for a long time." So I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I mean, I've never tried to do that before. I've never seen anyone else do that. And this is not really a large, piece of machinery. I mean, it is heavy machinery, technically, but," he said, "Son, I've been doing this for a while. I know what it can handle. That would be a lot faster." So I tried it his way. I defied my own judgment to listen to this person who supposedly had been doing it for a long time and knew exactly what he was talking about. And what happened is suddenly the forklift tipped forward. The timbers exploded across the parking lot there at the gate and all over the ground. And he's just sort of standing there scratching his head. And I said, "Well, that went well."
Holy crap.
I said,
Wow.
"Well, you can come over here and help me pick all this up." So from that point, I've sort of remembered that. And, just because someone says with 100% conviction, they know what they're talking about, they know this and they've seen that, It does not mean they have any idea remotely what they're even talking about. So,
100%.
You know, what I loved about this story the most was that I didn't know which way it would end. I was like,
Yeah.
either. and I was fearing that it ended this way, but oh man. Yeah.
I was seriously thinking, I'm like, oh, he figured it could do 2, and it's like now he can do 3, and it turned into like this thing of it was more efficient. But like, no, it was somebody who was a complete, I guess, obnoxious about it and wrong.
Man.
when I get that nagging suspicion that someone is completely full of it, no matter what they tell me otherwise, I tend to listen to that.
And you'd be wise to listen to that.
I feel like this is going to become code for us at cons. I'm going to be like, Don, it's a forklift moment. And we're going to know to
Well,
get
you
the hell
can't
out
use
of
that
there.
word now. People will know. We'll have to.
No one listens to the show.
Look, we'll put it in the chat.
Good God. But yeah. What about you, Don? What's your glass break moment?
I can't think of some. I mean, other than learning what certain words meant or the way certain things are taught. But I would really call something that is still part of, I guess, part of public discussion and debate, and that is the hypothetical situation where a lot of people online are having this discussion about bear versus man. And the premise is basically if your child were, and depending on who's asking the question, they may say a child or they'll say specifically daughter. If your child is lost in the woods, would you rather they were lost in the woods with a bear or a man? And the vast majority of the women who are responding to this prompt, and a good number of men, say bear, because of the idea of, at least the understanding of, you can't really trust a man out in the woods by themselves, but a bear is predictable. It understands, it avoids humans, those types of things, right? But a lot of the guys who are still programmed in this quote unquote alpha mindset, and now it's like the sigma mindset or whatever other type of bullshit terms that want to come up for themselves, or these Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson followers, what they will do, and Elon for that matter, what they do is, well, good luck getting any men to help find the child. And then it was, well, you got to understand, I protect my family, and I wouldn't allow my child to be out there with a bear. I would trust a man. And what happened was, so many of these guys were so focused on, I want to say that I'm not like the rest, that they proved that they were just like the rest by not listening to what the women were saying about why they would go with the bear. It was never a thing of like, oh, bears are better than human beings. It was, I can't trust this man to do the right thing, but I can trust the bear to more than likely leave me alone. And if you've seen a good number of nature walks that people post of them hiking, a bear comes up on the horizon, they make some noises, say no, make themselves big. Typically it's black bears, but the black bears themselves, leave them alone unless they're provoked, unless you're messing with their cubs, they leave you alone. And what many of the women were saying was, men won't leave us alone. And they played, voicemails that men were had left them after a date, or somebody DMs that people were sending them just because they had a profile. Nothing, not saying anybody deserves that, but just to demonstrate to a lot of these guys, like, we don't even interact with people and they harass us. So why am I going to trust a random male? I would feel safer with the bear. Now, it's a hypothetical. So would you want to be around a bear? No. Would you want to be around a random guy out in the woods by yourself? No. But what a lot of guys missed was understanding this. And what this realization I came to was, holy shit, it's so much worse than what I thought it was. Because you have people who are being explained and taught why the sentiment is this way, and they're still missing the point because they take it as a personal insult that they wouldn't be chosen, even though the choice is random male bear. So,
I
guys,
can't believe you won't let me hang
fix
out
it.
with your daughter in the woods. Jeez.
Look, I'm not letting anybody hang out with my kid, regardless of gender identity. I'm not
Like I
letting
go in the
anybody.
woods.
Well, that's the other thing. Well, James, I don't want to say nothing, but you're more likely to go to the woods than me. I know you've been camping.
Good Lord. Yeah, that's, I don't know. That was like all of Twitter in a little 2-minute thing there. Jeez.
It's no, but the thing is, if that's your reality, like you look at guys, and I feel we are comfortable to talk about men on this topic. It is as far as giving the perspective of men, because we're not speaking for any other communities, is what I mean. The idea that you are taught, whether we realize it or not, we are taught quote unquote gender roles, right? Or at least westernized gender roles. Like, this is the way a guy is supposed to be. This is the way a girl's supposed to be, because they always deal with the binary, right? This is the way it is. And what I'm seeing from a lot of older relatives when it comes to gender roles that they, I guess, had forced upon them, but also accepted as the way that the world is, completely fall apart when they're presented with the idea that there is a spectrum with respect to gender, and that tasks, jobs, duties do not have a gender associated with them. Whereas I've James, you brought up your mom. I got to bring up my mom. I've had numerous discussions with her about, we don't say you need to be a good little girl. We don't say, this is what guys are supposed to do, or only men, because I'm like, I don't want her being instilled with any of that, because that is not reality. That is not truth. There are plenty of women that can do any number of jobs. There are plenty of men that can do any number of jobs. Associating a gender to that demeans both the job and the gender of the individual doing the job, whether people realize it or not. It's like, that is your limit. That is where you can go. That's all. That's the box that you're allowed to be in. You cannot get out of that. Otherwise, people on the internet are going to get mad.
I thought bringing it back to the movie based on that, I thought the gender roles in this were interesting, especially what's her name? Deborah Harry.
Deborah Harry? Yeah.
No, but what's the character's name?
Nikki Brand.
Oh shit!
Nikki. Thank you. Like, Nikki hits this great piece where she's willing to go further than him, and you can see how he's like not fully emasculated by that, but he's threatened by it. He's like, wait, what do you mean you do that? Like you're really cutting yourself. Like it's too far for him, right? And that serves the overall purpose of the film as well, of trying to go more extreme and finding these things that interest you, but then also, where are your lines, right?
Right.
But I thought that it really hit something cool with gender roles right there, because there's just that momentary piece of the not being in control and not being the one who's trying everything, and you're some innocent little girl coming along for the ride. You know what I mean? And I thought that was interesting, and I don't know, I just wanted to throw that in while we were talking about gender roles.
Oh, absolutely. I think I think film deals with the fear of losing control, and I think at that point we're just sort of inching into that as he discovers a fact that's unsettling to him, because a lot of people. It's a lot of the video or violent sex is depicted as vulgar, and so a lot of people are sort of unsettled by that. And despite the fact that he runs this seedy little underground television show, even he is sort of unsettled by that. You can tell. So
yeah, and I love
being
how
presented face to face with it, I suppose.
Well, and it's great because he's introducing her to this video thinking, I'm going to broaden your horizons, Loved how they just flip that, but they also don't like, I don't know. It's not like major. We don't have to like watch him fall apart. Like, they just hit it really well.
Yeah. I gotta ask this question because this is a good criticism of shock television, or I should say it's just shock in general, right? It became a term in the 80s where it was shock TV, shock radio, shock, DJ Howard Stern or whoever they were happening to be talking about, because it was all about breaking from the traditions and sensibilities of the average American, or at least the silent majority, right? There are certain things you couldn't say on television, certain things you couldn't do on television. But in the 1980s, we have this expansion of cable, and you have more programming accessible. But when you have more programming accessible, which they bring up in the movie, you have more competition, and you have less of the shares of viewers and lower revenue. And his character Max brings that up a few times, like, I don't care, I'm just here to, I'm here to make money, I'm here to sell this. And it's the shock stuff that he gets it, or at least he starts to the path he starts to go down. We realize from the interviews that he was participating in, from the interactions that he had with the guy who pronounces Patron very horribly, Harlan, which I thought was hilarious. It's like, come on, Patron. Like, guy, it's Patron. It's not that hard. But I found that funny. But every time he's having these interactions with people, you're getting a glimpse of what television was like in the 80s as we have this expansion into cable, and why people are looking for that thing that's going to bring people in, even if it's something that you don't agree with. American Gladiators, when it came out, it was panned as like, this is just modern day Coliseum type stuff. We had rollerblade. I don't remember if you remember this, James, but rollerblade. And I'm sorry, Tommy, we haven't kind of had this conversation, so otherwise I would say remember. We had like the rollerblade TV series that was basically just nothing but pro wrestling and American Gladiators on roller skates. And all these TV shows were coming out where it was like, who's going to push the envelope even more? You had daytime talk show that changed from informative broadcasting to people fighting. Like in the 80s, people looked at it as, this is trash, this is garbage, but people were watching. We go on the internet, some of the popular sites that we had in the 90s and the early 2000s aren't there anymore, because there's so much worse stuff that you can access now. So things like rotten.com and consumptionjunction.com, really not needed anymore, because you get so inundated with violence on the news, violence in movies, violence in television shows, that going out and searching this reality stuff, this real stuff, it's not as much of a call for it, not as much of a pull for it. Not saying that people don't look for it, but it kind of lost its edge in the late 90s, early 2000s, especially when we had things like Banned from TV and Faces of Death available.
I was a big New York Enforcers fan of Roller Jam, Don. I just thought I'd throw that out.
Thank you for saying Roller Jam. I couldn't remember that. It saved my life.
I had to look it up. I typed in New York Enforcers and I was like, what was the league called? I couldn't resist that.
Yeah, but no, you even have this moment where it's like highbrow versus lowbrow, right? So even with like the sexual stuff, when he gets that tape where it's like the Apollo and Dionysus, the video, the idea behind it, that at least with his rejections, like, oh, it's too classy, it's too nice. As opposed to, I'm going to watch torture porn in snuff films. I mean, you kind of see how there's that old school, that highbrow look at it of like, there has to be a story, there has to be a plot, there has to be some meaning behind this. And now there's no narrative. There's no story. It's just somebody being tortured.
Which is interesting, because that's one of the complaints about the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved how meta that was.
Well, the thing is, I think that is the plot, right? The plot is self-reflection. The plot is, why are you watching this? Like, are you watching because you're actually entertained by it, or are you watching it because it's provocative and you have to watch it because you have to see what happens?
And thereby watching it, that is a reflection of you as a person.
Uh-huh.
And or the fear that it may actually corrupt your so-called purity, and steer you toward those acts so reviled by whatever far political leaning group, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, Tommy, you bring up a good point, because that quote that from the film, they say the TV screen is the retina of the mind's eye. So just in that sense, like, is the TV giving you what you want to see? I mean, sorry, are you responding more to things that you want to see, or are you responding more to these things because you haven't seen them?
Nice.
I mean, I wasn't going for anything. It's just one of those things that I gotta throw my mom under the bus again. When we watch horror films together, I rarely tell her, oh, it's a horror movie, right? I'll tell her it's a drama, it's a kidnapping movie, it's a whatever, right? Because if I tell her horror, she immediately goes to, this is bullshit. She doesn't say that I'm just interpreting for her. This is bullshit. None of this makes sense. None of this is based on, why am I supposed to be scared of this? This is so horribly done as far as trying to base it in reality, right? So for her, she looks at it as, this is not entertaining. It's not fun, because I can't look at this as something I can learn from, or I can see as actually possibly happening. And I have to throw it on her. I'm like, that's the part of it. It's, you have to imagine that this is real, or else there is no effect to you. Kind of the same way here. Like, her perspective on this film genre is different than somebody who is a fan of that film genre. So she's going to look for the things that, don't necessarily work for her, don't seem like they can be part of reality, as opposed to us horror fans. We look at them like, oh, this works for me. Mean Girls is not reality for me. That's horror.
Mean Girls is the most amazing film ever made.
No, that is incorrect. That is Spice World.
That's a strange way to say Shawshank. Anyway. So,
I thought you were going to say Dune.
Can resist. No, I think, I don't know. I think so much of this. Okay, here's what I'm trying to say. Now that I've thought it out better. When I was reading criticism of this movie, every single time I just wanted to yell, I don't think you understood what he was doing. That's the point. Right. and I'm not a huge Cronenberg fan. I'm not. I didn't overly love this. I thought it was good. I probably won't watch it again for another 10 years. But like, I'm not one of the people like my buddy Danger. Danger is so into Cronenberg and body horror, and like, he did the Fly episode and stuff like that. And I love that, but I don't feel that same thing. Right. And yet at the same time, it's just not me. It's not a problem with the movies. And every criticism that I read was like, oh, they're just trying to be shocking, or they're just trying to do this. And I'm like, that's literally the point of the fucking movie, dude. And I don't know if it's changed over time, because obviously I was just reading stuff that's pretty recent where people were reviewing it or redoing analysis on it. But like, it was just fascinating to me that I was like, you watched the movie and you still didn't get it like at all. I could see if you like watched the trailer and went, oh, I don't want to see that. That looks like shit. Right. I could grasp that. But if you watched the movie and then think, oh, they just did things for shock value, that just really blew me away. And then, Don, you wrote me and you made a little comment about James Wood that was very much in the same vein. And I was just like, I can't imagine. Cronenberg seems like he doesn't give a shit if people don't get his stuff. It's not for them, whatever, but I can't imagine dealing with that all the time, of people coming up to you and explaining to you that they didn't understand your movie without saying so. So, yeah.
It's thinking of what you had said before, Don, about watching horror movies, and someone might say, well, that's not realistic, or that's not my reality, or that would never happen. Which, I mean, obviously Videodrome, no, that would never happen, because everyone's
Right.
still using cassettes and smoking in the office and what have you. And that's so it's fallen into the realm of alternate reality. But nonetheless, in that past, in 1983, which is when the film came out, that could have been the future, but it wasn't.
Right.
It obviously isn't now. But so there's
I
always
don't know.
that possibility.
I beg to differ. It could be. This could be our future. I mean, sorry, we could be the future that they were referencing.
Could be.
I mean, because I looked at this movie and I wrote Fahrenheit 451 down as the book, but well, I would say the book more than either one of the movies, because I looked at it the same way as far as Bradbury's argument in that book, or at least the rationale. He was just concerned about technology. You know, we turned it into censorship, which makes sense because the consumer gets to determine the meaning, the reality of the product consumed. But for Bradbury, he argued that this was, in interviews, he clearly stated this was about us being so focused on television. Like, those screens are going to take over our lives, right? And in looking at that, I would make the argument that this movie is a reflection of what it is like now, because we carry screens with us. We carry television with us. We carry the streaming services. We carry all these things that are going to program and adjust our behavior. I mean, even like little stuff. We have so many warnings on the news about what not to do with your social media. You're going on a trip, don't tell anybody, because people can quickly access your home, as far as like your home's location, and understand how long you're going to be gone. If anybody's watching your house, if you have a dog, you know, what school your kid goes to, all these things, right? So it changes our impression of other people to where, you're damn right, I'm not trusting anybody. I've seen what people present themselves as on social media. I've seen how people present themselves in reality television programming, but then I've seen what it's like when those cameras are not on them. I've seen what it's like when they're not being cultivated, when they're not being managed. These people are not who they seem to be. The presentation of the reality is not the reality, is what I was getting to.
It's artificial reality. Yeah, people projecting an image of who they would like to be perceived as.
Yes. Which, sadly, I mean, we all do, because we're all in that age group where we look at it and say, damn it, I'm glad social media was not around when I was in high school. I'm glad it wasn't around when I was in college. You know, that's the perspective we have, because we understand how much of an impact us filming our own lives and own reality would have on our reality.
Well, I think a lot of people have that fear that they may do something incredibly stupid and may become viral, and then you may become judged by, you know, whatever it is.
Oh yeah, I found myself doing that, because there was a James probably remembers this. When I went to Arizona a couple of months ago, went to the campus at Arizona State University, and this guy, the quote unquote rape preacher, Father Dean or Brother Dean or whatever he calls himself, he basically just yells at women for wearing clothes that they want to wear. And he just calls them sluts. He calls it, you know, he says all these disparaging terms to them, and then also says, hey, if you're wearing stuff like that, you deserve to be sexually assaulted.
Wow.
So he says all this stuff, right? So apparently there was somebody who walked up later during this, and he was just like listening to the guy, and somebody was like, oh, you agree with him? He's like, yes, I do. I do agree with him. And I'm thinking, like, this is a fucking Andrew Tate guy. He's doing his drop shipping. He's doing all this stuff, because he had the bags and everything with him. Like, he's one of those guys. He pulled out his phone. And at that moment, I'm like, I'm not going to do anything on camera that's going to be seen or taken the wrong way. So he just held up his camera while he was talking to people in the crowd. I'm like, I'm just going to fucking stand here, because I know how this could be played. So I can't be my normal self and have a conversation with him. It now turns into, I know that I should exercise my right to the Fifth Amendment, which doesn't apply at this moment. But I just need to shut the fuck up. I don't need to say, I don't need to engage. I don't need to ask this guy a question. I don't need to talk to anybody around here because it can quickly be changed to suit somebody else's narrative and suit somebody else's vision and version of reality. You know, through cognitive dissonance or just groupthink.
Absolutely. It could be manipulated on some political level to against you or against or to promote that agenda, whatever you would call that he is.
I don't know what I would call it. Man.
I know what I wanted to call it, and it was
enabling predatory men, I suppose.
Yeah, right. It was like, grow up, buddy. Like, yeah. Think about what this guy's representing and think about the world that you want to, cultivate and create.
I'm always fascinated by people who will pick a corner to stand on to try to get punched in the face. I think that is a weird way to spend your time. Like, you could just get a job at some of the lockdown units I used to work at. I got punched in the face all the time. If that's your thing, at least get paid for it too.
Right.
Man.
Well, I mean, the guy who was there with his sign, he got 2 times. So, it happens. All right. I got to ask the two of you this question because the movie made me think about this with reality, right? Do either of you, is the face that you put forward outside of your home who you actually are?
A grumpy, don't fucking talk to me person? Yeah, probably.
Okay.
It depends on the context. I don't know.
Okay.
I would say it's an aspect of who I am, and there are a lot of different aspects to that.
Okay.
I mean, different people see different aspects each day.
Okay. Because it made me think about the way in which Max's character is seeing different things in the world, right? He's hallucinating, he's seeing all these different things taking place, or inanimate objects all of a sudden having some type of life. And we typically look at people the same way. We look at, this is somebody that I associate with this type of behavior or these types of attitudes, right? And then there's person B. They have their own type of stuff. Now, my relationship with person B and person A are independent of each other. But when A and B may interact, so let's just say James and Tommy, I get along great with both of you. Tommy, you don't like James. James doesn't like Tommy. And then Tony comes in. He doesn't like either one of you, right? But we all, all of you like me. I know this is a fantasy world. All of you like me. So I'm never going to have a moment where I'm going to speak badly about either one of these people. Whereas I'll just pick Tommy because he's on the middle of my screen. So Tommy, if you looked at it as I treat James the same way I treat you, you would be like, why are you such friends with that asshole? Because that is your perspective. That is, yeah. You know what, James? Go fuck yourself. So,
why are you friends with that asshole?
Exactly.
Yeah, right. So it would be perceived. Now I'm going to be perceived differently by you to where, can I trust Don? And the same thing with James. Can I trust Don because he's still friends with Tommy? Can I trust Don because he's still friends with James? So now our relationship is going to be affected because of the way that we perceive each other's role in that relationship. And I just think this movie is a great reflection of human behavior. I trusted this person, but I can't trust this person. So the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and the friend of my enemy is my enemy.
Right. And that all begins on the playground when the kid says, well, I can't be friends with you because you're friends with so-and-so. It's only when we get older, we have a little more depth to that. Well, I can't be friends with you because you're friends with him and he thinks this and he said this and we're not cool. So therefore you and I can't be cool if you and that person are, getting along.
Tommy, you just described World War I.
Thank God the horror community never does that.
Yes.
And every job I've ever had and every group of friends I've ever had. And,
just know if you're ever with me, I have a rule, which is I don't fuck with people who fuck with people I don't fuck with.
Whoa.
It's a very straightforward thing. It's like if I don't, I'm very fair, or at least I think I'm very fair. My thing is like, even if I don't like somebody, I'm not going to look at it as like, man, I really hate the fact that you're friends with Mike.
Fuck Mike.
I would just look at it as like, that's your fucking friend. Like, I don't give a damn. But if it's like Mike and I have beef and you still want to be friends with him, like, no, I can't trust you. Because if I have a reason for not liking somebody, at least from my perspective, my reality, if I have a reason for not liking somebody, that should be enough to signify that that person is not okay. Again, my perspective.
Sure. I think I have people in my life that I'm like, if that person doesn't like somebody, there's probably a real reason.
Yes.
Right? And then I have people in my life where I'm like, oh, that's the flavor of the week. Okay. And I just ignore it. So yeah, I think I'm somewhere in between as far as trusting my friends and who they're mad at and that kind of thing. And yeah. I myself, I might be really upset with somebody, but I try to remain professional. Like if it was somebody in the horror community, for instance, and I'm not talking about anyone in particular, I'm just throwing out an example. Like I wouldn't be like, oh, fuck that guy, don't work with him, don't do this. It's a me thing. I'm not going to work with them and I'm not going to push their books or whatever. Like, I don't want them to fail. I don't want them to, I don't know. To me, we got to keep the horror community as strong as possible. That does not include people who are sexually harassing women or whatever else. Like all of that needs to come to the forefront. I'm saying a personal beef of I just don't get along with somebody.
Right.
And I've seen people who dislike one person and go out of their way to like turn everyone against them and all that shit. And I'm like, that is so much more energy than I want to waste on this person. Like, I don't want to be involved. I don't know. I have a question about the film. Did you guys think it was weird that this whole thing has been set up forever for this one person? Like, I feel like they could have brought anybody in and done this and like, replaced him at the cable company or whatever. Like, this just seems like a shit ton of work for this one guy. I don't know.
I get the work though. I get the work because he's the president of that network, or an executive at that network. But he's the guy who can stop the other ones. Like, who else is going to have access to the partners, right? As the voice tells, like, you gotta go kill your partners. You gotta give us channel 83. I don't think anybody else would have had access to do that in order to get the conversion over to where they could actually have the channel. So I just see it as he's the right person, and also he's the right person because it's poetic justice. Like, he's the guy who's wanting to revive his career, or expand his reach within television by exploiting this stuff. So it's like, we're going to find the perfect fool for this. Kind of like I hate to say Seymour, but kind of like with Audrey 2 seeking out Seymour for this plan in Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah. Well, he's not a major media mogul, but he is over an underground television station. Mm-hmm. So it might be just the right balance for him to become interested in Videodrome and bringing it to the underground. And perhaps that's he's on the fringe where they can ensnare him into the conspiracy and sort of try to manipulate him. And you have sort of both sides trying to manipulate him against one another. But he was sort of in the right place or the wrong place at the wrong time. And
I realized as Don was speaking that I'm looking at this from 2024. I'm looking at this as there are 7 billion channels. There's streaming, there's all this, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not taking into account that when this came out, would you say it was 83? Is that right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That was definitely not the case. So you'd have more limited who you should go for. And I guess that makes sense. So I withdraw my complaint.
Hell, not even that, James. Like, we're forgetting not all these channels were on all day long.
Oh, that's true.
So
That's right.
So if you've got a situation, let's just say, I don't know, their underground network, because it's so cheap, it's they're pirating everything. They don't have to pay for anything other than somebody to push the button. They can be on 24 hours because, in all honesty, if you're on at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sorry, I'm going to stereotype here, that Midwestern grandma is probably not going to be up late at night so she can call the local station or do an FCC complaint. For those of you who don't know, for context, those of you listening, that was kind of the stereotype that was given in the 80s for anybody who called to complain about radio shows or TV shows. It was some grandma in the Midwest who was upset that somebody said a bad word. That's how it's always presented. So I don't want anybody's grandma coming after me.
My grandma's going to take you down, dude. I mean, she's a zombie, so... What, too dark? Okay. So...
Wow.
My grandma would think that's hilarious. Now then, I was also thinking about like I was the type that was up at 2 a.m. watching endless infomercials or weird shit that was on, so that would be your ideal time as well. Like if you wanted to get people interested in this, there isn't stuff to watch, like you were saying, so they're watching whatever's available, right? So yeah, he would have been cashing out great.
But the late night television was generally thought to be a little racier, a little more, edgy and what have you. And so that's you would have all the night owls and all the strange people lurking at those hours, watching strange television and doing who knows what, getting ideas in their head. It could be scary to some people.
Look, that's when you had some of the good, the movie marathons, like the Rhonda Shear Up All Night back in the 80s and early 90s.
Did you say Up All Night the right way?
No, I'm not going to do that. Leave me alone, James. But you had shows, you had programs like that really gave you those old B movies or ridiculous things from the news. Honestly, I would say probably the only recent show, and I won't give the other show any credit because it wasn't as good, like Tosh.0 or even the world's craziest TV series that True TV would have, where you got to see real footage, dash cams, body cams, security, home video, stuff like that, where you're getting a snapshot of somebody's life or a snapshot of something that happened to somebody during a day. And we kind of get to see reality that's not the reality show stuff that we've been exposed to, which is scripted. And it's pretending as though this is giving us insight into people's lives and what's going on. There's so much stuff out there. I'm sure there's like subgroups in TikTok and wherever where you can find really weird stuff.
Well, and even all this about who's watching at 2 a.m, like that goes to the motivation of the other side as well, and how they're trying to clean up the nation and all that shit. Like, these are the deplorables doing who knows what, as Tommy said. I love how this all works on such great levels, but doesn't have to be. There's no monologue of these are the deplorables who are up at 2 a.m. So yeah, I feel like we'd get that with a reboot about the internet, Don. We'd get these are the terrible people.
Well, we had, what was it, Unfriended to the Dark Web that came out. I liked it. I liked it better than the first one. I'll admit it. But Dark Web kind of gave us a little bit of that. And there have been a few other web-based movies that have kind of given us that indication of interacting with other people online and it going badly. But I think it could be done in the same sense where, I don't know, maybe it would rival Dave Chappelle's sketch where he's, in the real world internet.
Hmm.
If either of you've seen that sketch, it's really good because it's like if the internet were a real place, it would be the most disgusting place on earth. And just him walking through the internet as if it were a mall.
Everyone offering him penis enlargers and the like.
Yes, yeah.
Dude, Ralph Wrecks the Internet was painful enough for me. I don't think I could watch that. Jeez.
It's true. It wasn't the same as the first one.
No, I meant the representation of the internet. That was painful enough.
Oh no. Yeah, you're right. Oh yeah, the reactions to the video.
All of it.
God, the internet is such a horrible place, but
at least you can find our podcast and listen to 240 episodes about social commentary in horror films.
Did either of you laugh? I mean, again, this is going to be one of those things with an age. I had to laugh at the Cath Road Ray mission. Just the idea that, I mean, I got the sense that it's half, part halfway home, part shelter, part detox clinic. I almost said something I didn't mean to say, because that would have been a different movie, different body horror.
I would like to reserve that as a title for an upcoming short story.
The Detox Clinic.
That's amazing. I'm going to release it right after Methadone Clinic Meerkats. But
there, I give it to you. My box is full. But no, I mean, I'm saying because
the log line at the bottom of the book.
Oh God.
Boom. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'll be good.
Well, no, I was going to say because the idea of the Cath Road Clay mission, right? It's clear that TV, at least what they're representing, TV has an effect on people. It's changing reality. It's making you not focus on things. It's making you actually a worse off person. So I don't know if either of you picked up on like how the cathode ray kind of represents this break, I guess.
We have these people who I suppose they're I don't know, wayward travelers, or almost like a homeless shelter, or like you said, a halfway house, but they end up in this little shelter with assistants to help them around to these various cubicles, where some of them are sitting and watching television, which is supposed to, I suppose, heal them from whatever it is that broke them or left them in that situation to begin with. Which is so is television depicted as perhaps a corrupting force, but also potentially a healing force as well?
I guess it comes down to the programming, and I don't say that as a joke. I mean, because that was one of the criticisms in the 50s from one of the articles I was reading, which was you're going to have these things that, based off the programming, it's going to result in people's intellectual capabilities being lessened, their motivation, enthusiasm being lessened, their even the argument that people's creativity and imagination would lessen because of television. So I mean, it's really hard. It really comes down to nature versus nurture, right? If you have the programming, you have the nurturing that's going to go there, or you have a free-for-all where anything can be presented as entertainment, for that matter, because I don't personally think that torture videos are entertainment.
Oh, well, you're saying that about the nature of the programming. Perhaps if you look at someone ending up at a halfway house because of a heroin addiction, and perhaps them sitting at another television in a different cubicle is the equivalent of the methadone, just for one idea.
No, that's really interesting. I worked in a rehab center for 5 years, and so it's one of those things that's extremely misunderstood, but also just man, it sucks to go there and see it, and like it's even right now, like thinking about it, it's a ton of emotions for me, like varying emotions that are all very in conflict with each other. But I didn't even make that connection, and then as soon as you just said that, I was like, holy shit, that's so similar. Wow. Mind blown. Good work.
Well, they had some sort of conflicting ideas about the end of the film, the way things went at the end. It's basically Nikki was used to seduce Max and to lure him to fulfill the ends of those opposed to Videodrome. But it is her likeness that repeats Bianca's mantra to him in the end.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting, that it was actually her that is urging him to become the new flesh, when she was the one who actually reeled him into this into the clutches of the oppressors to begin with. So
yeah, I took that as
She made her plan.
that she's his temptation and he's going to follow whatever she does, kind of thing. Not like on a brainwashed level, but just, like that's the vehicle that you use if you want him to listen, kind of thing. But I did find it fascinating at the end, because I was like, you reach this point where you can't tell what's hallucination, what's real, what's not. Like, are they using her likeness? Is it just what he's saying? Like, there's so much that I had questions about with that. And so I thought that really played into this whole concept, because it was like, basically, like, when he reaches a certain point, is he seeing this to convince himself even? Like, I don't know. And I was so confused by it. And I think that's intentional. But I also, if somebody else out there totally gets it, great. Like, I think this just comes back to Cronenberg being Cronenberg and doing the things he sees, and either we come along or we don't,
Right.
But I like how many questions it gives and how it just throws you off so much that you can't stop thinking about it. I don't have any easy answers, and I think that that's purposeful, but I don't know.
I was gonna say that's the mark of a good movie, is if it has you asking questions. If you're done with the movie, if you're done with the movie and you immediately go, "Oh, that was satisfying. Everything was wrapped up." The movie was either too simplified, or it was just it was a mathematical formulation. But there should always be questions. There should always be this moment of, there's something more that could have been done. There's probably some loose end that you feel in your head. And also questioning, from having conversations like this, questioning not just what you saw, but what the meaning of what you saw was. And I think that's the other thing that we got to think about with this reality. Like, our perceptions, our bias, our lived experience are going to shape the way in which we look at certain things. And as a result, we're going to have different viewpoints, different perspectives on what certain things in the film might have even meant, as well as the reception which they get into of trying to figure out why Max is receiving these things in a different way, and why he's, why things are working out for him differently than people previously that they had done this with.
Well, they have that phrase they keep throwing around during the film, the new flesh, which is basically going digital or video, as according to the era. So it's basically would be removing yourself, as Brian Oblivion did, removing yourself from the analog or the this world, and just fully instilling yourself into that video world and becoming
right.
So at the end, I said a sort of hypothesis that by removing himself from that equation, there's the possibility of him becoming purely new flesh, purely video. Well, as with our society, when the establishment fails, we may hand the truth to the people for justice. So I wonder if by his doing that, it might spark some form of revolution, subsequent massive video coverage, and he would endure through, that's just kind of a random hypothesis I had thrown around. But then what threw me off, like I said again, was the appearance of Nikki rather than someone. But, as you had mentioned, James, her being the one to sort of lead him through all of this mess to start with. Perhaps that's the prime vehicle for. And again, the mingling of what's reality and what's hallucination is, just strewn all throughout the film. So
Yeah, and just finding that area between all of that, I think that there's definitely a big area that's supposed to take that we don't ever get to see really, or if we do, we don't know that we're seeing it. But no, I have no idea if that's why Nikki's there at the end. That was just my take of possibly. I want to ask you guys about excuse me, media manipulation. That was one of the things that was the most relevant to today for me watching this. And I kind of went back to, I don't know how old you are, Tommy, but Columbine was a huge thing in my life. And I just remember this onslaught of everybody blaming Marilyn Manson, piece of shit. We'll come back to that. But I don't think he caused the shootings. Everything else we'll leave out for now. But there was this huge, Marilyn Manson caused this, and video games caused this, and it's always this thing I don't like caused it.
Right.
It's never like, oh shit, we have to get rid of football because that might be causing these concussions, like it's always this thing I don't like caused this thing I don't like. And I can get both out of my life by blaming them together.
Right.
And I don't know, that still just really hit me because I see so much stuff online that's constantly like, there's a thing going on right now about how Taylor Swift is Satan. And bringing satanic music into everyone's life and leading us all to hell. And I'm like, that's your choice for who's leading us into hell? Like, come on, man. Like, that's the best you can do. I can introduce you to other music, but it's...
I mean, there's music which will blatantly tell you, yeah, we're taking you to hell. Come right along. Right. Hop on the bus. That's where we're going. We're going to kill thousands of people in the process. Gladly.
Yeah, and that's the part that never makes sense to me. That it's always just this thing I hate, like I said, And I mean, it makes sense to me. I don't get how it catches on and how people become obsessed with it. Like the Marilyn Manson thing was huge. Like my parents were talking about it, and I was like, "How the fuck do you know who Marilyn Manson is?" Like. I don't know. The whole thing was so weird. And my mom truly believed that Marilyn Manson was related to Charles Manson. And so she was blaming that. So that's why I take shots at my mom on this show. But yeah, this shit never goes away. And it's always something. And it's just constant. And I don't understand how people keep feeding it and repeating it instead of going, are we done with this yet?
Well, I remember that mindset being around long before that. I mean, during the time period this film actually came out in the early 80s. I mean, I recall in the 80s, violent films and music and games and general content being blasted by, a lot of the time, it was fundamentalist conservatives with the fear that it would damage the youth, corrupt morals and society. And, you had the satanic panic and all of that. And that sort of faded out as people began to realize it was a bit ridiculous. But you still have that endures. I mean, you've had, you later on, you had all of the hearings for all of that Twisted Sister and all these other bands had to go to court and answer for their lyrics. And you had, so, I mean, it's just, people are constantly vying for censorship.
100%. Can you imagine Dee Snider going, well, I guess I have to go to Congress and testify? Like, what a day that must have been, right?
It's like, do I have a regular suit?
I'm not even shitting on him. Like legitimately, the lifestyle he's leading, and then he has to interrupt everything to go to Congress to fight this really stupid idea. Like, it's so weird.
Yeah, he and Frank Zappa. You're gonna put stickers and warnings on music? This is bullshit.
And then helps sales.
Subliminal messaging was another fear from back then,
Oh yeah.
I think the film may play on that a little bit. Yeah, that someone couldn't, through video or digital means, infiltrate your mind and, plant the seeds of thought there that may be counterproductive to who you are or what you mean to achieve.
And now we have people saying they want to do the Neuralink. So, good luck with that. Good luck with that, there, buddy.
I would never pause the show just to take a shot at Elon, but I would like to say I've been watching this documentary about the Batman movies, and when I saw the Christopher Nolan Batmobile today, I was like, huh, a billionaire with this weird car that doesn't really look like a car, that's all kind of strange shapes pieced together. This reminds me of something, but it's definitely not Batman. And now I'm just concerned that that's where he got the idea for the Cybertruck. There you go. That's my rant.
I think he got the idea for the Cybertruck from a book on how to draw just the basics shapes.
Man. No, but my other thing with this movie, before I get too far off track, I had a moment where I was like, why is it giving them like tumors? Like, what is the point of this? Like, you could just shoot visions into their head or whatever, right? But like really breaking into like the body horror and self-destruction, like literal physical self-destruction, right? Like we can't control tumors, and we can't control cancer, and we can't control giant vagina things like opening up in our stomachs where we have to plug in a Betamax. You know, I don't know. I thought, like, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, tumor really works because a tumor is real. And another reason to leave the analog world, because you won't have a tumor in the digital world, right?
Right.
So you should get uploaded, buddy. And I thought that was an interesting little thing to throw in there the more I thought about it.
Yeah, it could be that, and it could be something of a metaphor for those who believe that this violent television was a cancer on society as well.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's good. I like that.
Well, James, you brought up Columbine, and I'm not bringing this up as a joke. I seriously had this in my notes, and I'm circling it right now. Now, it may be an issue of time period, but I would argue against that because we had films that had similar scenes in it. But this whole, we hear gunshots in the office and everybody's like, oh, what was that? Sounds like a gunshot. And they all start making their way to the direction of the gunshots.
Yeah.
And I immediately thought, I'm like, I remember other movies where stuff like this would happen and people would run. And I recall there were still movies in the 80s and the 70s because workplace shootings were a thing. It's just that we know more about workplace shootings, and we're having more workplace shootings because of a greater access to firearms and lack of mental health and social programs that can actually assist people who are going through crises. But that really bothered me that, oh, it sounds like somebody's been shot. Let me go over there. It's just people rush over there, and the perceived assailant is just walked right out of the building. I'm sorry, right out of the room into a separate part of the building. And it really bugged me that this was the reaction that people had in the movie, but then the likelihood of that reaction happening probably would have happened prior to 9/11. Prior to 9/11 and prior to Columbine, because of the way in which people perceive dangers everywhere at that point.
Well, and also this is why we need good guys with guns, Don, because if all right, I'm not even gonna do it. I just couldn't resist. If there had been one good guy there, they could have taken him down. But no,
like the Lone Ranger, yes.
They were way more helpful in the 80s. That's what I'm trying to say. And no, this part really was weird to me. I was sitting there like, this is the least believable part. I could hear fireworks and I'm going the other way. So,
look, I hear you sneeze. I'm going the other way.
Right. Oh, man.
But if they run toward the source of the sound and they get it on video, they might be able to post some really, engrossing content on social media.
Oh, Tommy, you know what? You bring up a good point, because that is what we do now.
Yes,
that is 100% what we do now, because I've seen, I can't recall which school shooting it was, but I remember seeing the footage of the kids inside because they were just live streaming it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it might not have been a school shooting, it might have just been a school lockdown because there was a perceived threat. Because it wasn't a regular one where, you know, everybody's kind of like, yeah, all right, let's just be quiet for the minute until they tell us to get back. Like there was a serious threat. So these kids are recording all of it, and partly they were recording because, one, I don't know if I'll be seen again, but then two, if some shit goes down, I'm the one who caught it. Because this one kid who was narrating his video, he's like, oh shit, they're coming in. And it was like the police. He said, oh, fuck everybody. It's a SWAT team. Shut the fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed at that point where it was like, oh my God, it's turned into a game now. Like, this is a serious situation. I get the anxiety, I get the fear, and I also get the need to document it. But you have some people that look at the serious situations and it's kind of like, no, I'm going to document this because if I get out of this, I've got the video. You know, I've got access to what happened. I can help tell this story and help shape that reality, but also intermingle mine with the story that's taking place.
Mm.
And possibly they can just capture it and get a ton of views, and then
Oh yeah,
well, now everyone knows who I am, so that's my brush with fame because I was there to capture this incident. Because, you know, so many in society just have this obsession with, these days especially, I think, with just becoming famous, being seen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean I suppose that was always there, but I think even more so with the advent of social media and all of that.
Tom, you brought up a great one. I just forgot about until you mentioned it. This idea of documenting this and look at me and going for clout. I remember during the George Floyd protests, there were two distinct people I recall. I can't remember the name of the one individual, but the other person was dressed up as Batman. And the guy who was dressed up as Batman used the protests and riots as a photo shoot. And people turned it, initially it was like, oh man, this guy's serious. He showed up as Batman to help us, protest against blah, blah, blah. Right. Because there were people cosplayed who went in costume to the protest. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But he used it for a photo shoot.
Wow.
And the same thing with a couple of Instagram influencers where they did the same thing where they would like hold their fist up and they would hold a sign that they made, but they're standing like nowhere near the protest. They take their photos and then they just go about their day. And these individuals were getting exposed because people were taking pictures of them, taking pictures of themselves.
Wow.
Showing that they were there just to take photos with the crowds behind them to make it look like, hi, I'm, Jenna Smith, got 20 million followers, and I'm here because, enough is enough. And then somebody like tags them like, you made a 10-second video that you uploaded and then you left. We watched you. We watched you leave. And then they'll show the video of them leaving because they were a recognizable person that was not there for the right reasons. But yeah, you're right. I mean, people will now it is look at me with a lot of the stuff.
Even like this weekend, we're recording this at the end of April. What is today? The 28th. A couple days ago, massive tornadoes hit around my hometown, and then, which is Lincoln, Nebraska, kind of went around that, went to Omaha and leveled a lot of Elkhorn, and then moved into Iowa and took out Minden and some other stuff. And then yesterday, some more in Oklahoma. And I'm that guy that's sitting there watching all of this on Twitter nonstop, right? Like I'm judging where the tornado is from where my mom's house is or whatever else. And then it dawns on me that the videos I'm watching are people standing outside doing this. And there's part of me that I grew up in the Midwest. I understand I got to go see this shit, right? And I also, for me, it was always like, if this thing wants to take me out, there's nothing I can do. So what difference does it make at this point? And I was like 18 when I thought that way. I don't think that way anymore because I'm not invincible anymore. And but like, there's part of me that was like, are you are you recording this so that people can see it like I am, or for the news? Are you doing it because you want to see destruction? Are you doing it for likes and shares? You know, like I got like super cynical all of a sudden that like people were just out there trying to get the best tornado video with like a house being destroyed so that they could get likes. You know, and I don't know, maybe that's a me problem of hating human beings, but
look at the charity stuff that some people do and they post to social media
and make sure that everyone knows they did it.
Yeah.
So the real goal is not to help someone, but to gain everyone's attention, and so that everyone knows that you're whatever kind of person you're trying to present yourself as.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the only person I know of who does, I can't remember his name, but I remember seeing him on social media where he basically just passes on money to, you know, it might be the elote man, or it might be some, you know, a landscaper, or somebody who's just down on the time. So basically he just uses this whole platform and is like, hey, I met this guy George, he was going through this. You know, if you send the money to this, I'll bring, and then he records himself for accountability. Like, you guys raised $5,200. Here's the money. And the guy would say, oh, thank you. He said, no, this is not for me. This is from all these people who donated, and we made this happen. So those ones, I'm like, those are great. Those are great. But as far as like the, hey, buddy, are you hungry? Here's a sandwich, my friend. Come on, pass it forward. You know, then like taking selfies with a person and guys, pass it forward. Like, no, like, like just do the thing, or raise the money for somebody and give it directly to them. Don't take a slice of pizza and then turn it into an opportunity for you to make, I don't know, however many hundreds of thousands of dollars from a post.
Hang on, dude, don't eat that pizza. We got to reshoot part of this.
Yeah. And then we're taking the pizza with us and we're going to give it to the next guy.
Oh man.
Double it and give it to the next
piece
guy.
of pizza for 2 weeks. Okay, that's actually funny. You should totally make a TikTok of going up to somebody and asking, do you want a slice of pizza or double it for the next one? And then just see how many pizzas you owe somebody. I'd like to see that video. Just don't do like the kiss or slap, okay? I can't deal with that.
Oh God, no, that's horrible. Oh my God, we'll do it at. We'll do the spirited giving. There we go.
God,
I crossed all my stuff out. I did like the whole North America's getting soft, and I was like, why do you say North of Canada? But I was like, wow, like that's what you're gauging on. But the only other thing I would say is, you see how reality itself helped major cable news networks. So CNN, it got its big like boost because the first Iraq war, live coverage, like they were showing bombs as they were being got into the cameras that the Department of Defense would release, camera footage they would release from the smart bombs, and they're showing the smart bombs moving, got the cameras showing as far as like what they're hitting. And meanwhile, all of us are sitting at home like, wow, not thinking, holy shit, they probably blew up a whole family, or like they did all these things that should not have been done. So you had the ratings because people were like, this is great entertainment, this is wonderful. Then you had the same thing with CNN and headline news with the OJ trial in 94, 95. Fox really doesn't get going until it's really about rehashing Cold War propaganda, but pushing it towards anybody who's brown. So you had a lot of Islamophobia, a lot of I guess a lot more xenophobia that was being pushed. It got into the campaign ads. It was really dark during that period. And I say that because what we've seen is a lack of a return to the news is about informing you about your local community, state, nation, and the outside world, to where it's conversations, it's arguments between a panel of people about a subject that they have not informed anyone about, have not given any information about. It's just simply the news is now people arguing as opposed to people informing.
It becomes a lot more subjective that way.
Yes.
And every single opinion has the same weight.
Because that's their reality, James.
Oh, yeah, no, I know. Tommy, do you have anything in your notes that we have not hit?
Oh, I think that's most of it.
Cool.
I think we pretty much covered the majority of the movie. The only thing that, like I said, that it really kind of puzzled me about the movie is the appearance of Nikki at the end, which I guess we can just, as I mentioned, we can only really speculate about that, about the actual reason. But no, I mean, I think a lot of the themes we've pretty well covered.
Cool. All right, I suppose that'll move us to movie recs then. If people liked this, what else should they watch? And Tommy, you are the guest, so if you'd like to, you can go first.
All right. Well, I would say for body horror, one of my favorites, much newer film than Videodrome, but American Mary, written and directed by the Soska sisters.
So good.
Canadian horror. Yes, that was a nice one. For horror expanding into the digital or video realm, some will remember The Lawnmower Man from the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And leaning toward other offerings of the time period of our discussed film, and for paranoia, uncertainty, and a fair degree of viscera, evocative of particular aspects of this film, we have John Carpenter's The Thing.
Hell yeah.
And of course, you can go with some of the films adapted from Clive Barker's work as well, which have that sort of a vibe. Most of all, I would say Hellraiser, perhaps its initial sequel, Hellraiser 2. After that, things go in a little bit different direction. But then I would say, of course, the science fiction horror series. Many Netflix viewers will know Black Mirror.
Yes.
Okay.
Got a lot of good entries along these lines. And of course, other works from David Cronenberg, including Scanners, The Fly, and the other films in his unofficial trilogy that began with Videodrome, and which also include Existenz and Crimes of the Future.
Nice.
So, those are mine.
Excellent. I usually do a double feature. I was originally going to go with Society, but then I remembered Slither. And Slither fits so many of the same themes, and it's still totally different, And but like even using the media, because it uses radio waves and stuff like that, and there's so much about like bodily transformation, shall we say, and I don't know. I just there's like a whole theme of decay of the human body throughout both, and I think they'd go really well together. All right, Don, what are your 546 movies today?
Well, I was scared because Tommy took one of mine, but then you didn't take Society, and I had it on the list, so I only lost one. So
I almost
Society.
brought it up when I mentioned Danger earlier because he did an episode on Society.
See, They Live, 1984, The Running Man, Back to the Future 2, Fahrenheit 451, but I would just recommend the book as opposed to the movie adaptations. Nothing against them. I just like the book more. Jacob's Ladder, Dead Ringers, Brother from Another Planet, The Conversation, Night of the Creeps, Chinatown, if you know, you know, Nightbreed, Pumpkinhead, Return of the Living Dead, The Gate, Creepshow, House, Cat's Eye, Tales from the Dark Side, The Stuff, the entire Purge series, Salvador, Slacks, Fight Club, and the John Ritter classic, Stay Tuned.
Yes.
I'm absolutely amazed at how many of the movies that you just mentioned we've done episodes on. I was sitting here like, yep, did that one, did that one, did that one. That's crazy. We don't usually have that happen. But yeah. And I'd already forgotten the greatness of Slacks. If you guys have not seen Slacks, go watch it. It makes me so happy. I love that movie. Anyway, Tommy, that brings it back to you, man. Where can people find you online, buy your books? Are you going to be at any interesting conventions coming up, etc.?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you can find me at my website, tommybsmith.net. I have a newsletter now, and since last year, it's called Chaos Synthesis, so you can subscribe to that for any sort of news forthcoming. And yes, I have a number of different events lined up. I just came back from AuthorCon in Williamsburg.
Nice.
And I've got, next up, I've got Between the Pages Writers Conference in Springfield, Missouri. SoonerCon in Norman, Oklahoma, and of course, I'll see you people at Imaginarium in Louisville,
Woohoo.
Kentucky. As well, I will be at KillerCon in Austin, Texas.
Oh, nice.
Last but certainly not least, AuthorCon 4 in St. Louis, Missouri.
Hell
And
yeah.
also with quite a few of my fellow members of the Kansas, Missouri chapter of the HWA, aka Horror in the Heartland. We'll all be there. So much
that's
to
cool.
come.
Nice. Well, that's fantastic, and we look forward to seeing you. We apologize that you have to hang out with us, though. No. All right. We'll survive somehow. All right. I guess that wraps it up for another week. As always, I am James Sabata.
And I am Don Guillory. I'm still going to say it that way for the show. It just feels weird.
Dr. Don. All right. We'll see you next week here at thenecronomid.com.
God, it was so weird to see like the precursor for OnlyFans.